Hello and welcome to the College of Lore. My name is Anthony and I'll be your Professor Bard. A good speechwriter has anecdotes, I just have Anthony notes. Here's everything I know about Prisoner 13. First, let me start with the ledger. What information could have been in this ledger and why does Prisoner 13 want it so bad? We know that she doesn't want to get free according to her write-up. So what use would the ledger be to her? One of the flavor notes actually informed my decision to rewrite the Warden with my own. Here's the quote from the adventure. This ledger documents the names, crimes, sentences, and commutations of every prisoner that's ever been incarcerated at Revel's End. The records include death certificates for the prisoners. The cause of death is always listed as natural, accidental, or unnatural with no details. This was very interesting to me. What if every prisoner at Revel's End always died? What if the Warden was the type of person who never let anyone go free? The sentence to be commuted was irrelevant to the Warden. Think about the prison. It's a perfect panopticon, a locked down vault, just a marvel of engineering and magic. Even if you do escape, you have to contend with the frigid waters. Characters who are exposed outside of the magically heated interior have to make con saves just to live. This is very interesting. Maybe 13 wants the ledger to prove that the Warden is killing prisoners for no reason at all. The first thing I did in my adaptation was to tell my friend to play any level of character that he wanted. He picked a level 13 rogue Air Genasi who could levitate, cast a few spells, and most importantly had a plus 15 to lockpick checks and stealth. Looking at his stats for a few hours before the game, I saw that he had no riz, no charisma at all. I decided to keep the suspicion table as is. Essentially, when you're scaling an adventure, you want to start by looking at the modifier of any character and applying that to your DM's guide for DCs. Another way to think about this would be that people with a plus 15 stealth only have to roll a 2 or a 20 to break a DC 15 check. So 95% of the time, any level 11 character, specifically a rogue, with expertise will be able to blow through any DC 17 check. According to the table, that's a medium difficulty, but actually it's trivial. 95% of the time, they'll be able to do it. And only if you have something specifically prepared for that natural one should you ask them to roll. So let's shift the words and their difficulty by probability to DC and verbal description using some beginner level statistics and remembering that a 1 is a failure, right? So at task difficulty, the DC modifier required and the dice roll is in the following table here. If we shift everything up slightly, we'll find that a trivial task is a DC 17, an easy task is a 20, a medium is a 25, and anything beyond that becomes hard, very hard, or nearly impossible. If you look at the percentage chance, anything that's easy is an 80% chance of success, anything that's hard is a 30% chance of success or below. You should only ever assign difficulty to your players that if they fail, you know exactly what will happen if they do, or you know something that would be incredibly funny if it were to happen. If things like probability are interesting to you, I can do an entire video talking about how I came up with these numbers, how I plotted them, some graphs and charts, a lot of really nerdy stuff. Here are some other things I added to Prisoner 13 to keep it fun and interesting. First of all, let me talk about the doors.
Fucking doors!
All the doors in the Panopticon are locked. In my world, this is due to a small arcane crystal sewn into the helm of both of your sleeves. If you come in as a guard, you will be able to open this like an RFID chip to open any doors. If you come in as a cook, you're only able to open the doors for cooks. The places that you can't get into would be like the tower door, the surveillance room, or the armory. And if you're a guard, you can't get into the kitchen. If you're a chef, you can't get into the guard areas. Seems pretty logical. For my players, I decided that if they did want to get into those rooms, they would need to steal a uniform. One way that I thought about doing this was if they dirtied a guard's uniform, force them to have it cleaned in the latrine area, which I imagined had a place to wash clothes, and then steal the clothes before they were fully dry, put them on yourself, and enter the area. The second thing I added was Flimbo. Flimbo is an overworked, underpaid wizard goblin who watches a permanent scrying spell cast by 20 different scry balls. He never sleeps and works on the base level of the Panopticon Tower in the surveillance room. He wears a pointy hat and dirty robes, and nervously ticks between each ball at random looking for something wrong with the prison. He worked with the head chef at the prison to enchant his coffee cup to have the strongest go-go juice on the planet. There are 20 invisible scrying eyes at every doorway, looking out into every hallway, like security cameras. Inside of the doorways are blind spots. Some scrying eyes can see doors, and others cannot. A successful DC 20 perception check lets a player notice a shadow being cast from an object that isn't there. A hint to the fact that it's even there in the first place for them to roll is just giving them the note that there don't seem to be that many guards out in the open watching prisoners. There's just a few blocking doorways to sensitive areas and a few leading 30 or so prisoners around during their daily chores. If a player ever fails a check or happens upon a sensitive area, I like to double the hit chance from a 1 to a 2 on the suspicion table to see if Flimbo happened to be watching that particular area. If it wasn't narratively interesting, I just ran the table as is. If a player fails a check or visibly walks into view of an area where they're not supposed to be, and it would be narratively beneficial for them not to be discovered, maybe Flimbo fell asleep. He is overworked and underpaid and overcaffeinated after all. My player snuck in as a cook. I didn't expect this at all, but it made things very fun. To spice it up a bit, I added a Michelin star holding chef that cooked the finest French cuisine in all of the land. She held herself to the highest standard. Of course, her name was Gordita Lamsey. She was a perfectionist, and if my players ever failed an int check while cooking for her, they would be stuck washing dishes for the rest of mealtime. Gordita is secretly planning a prison break that a wealthy mafia don sponsored to get one of the members of the Dons back, prisoner 111. In exchange for letting Gordita work at a high-profile glamorous restaurant, she's in on the take. She only exists to hinder the party members disguised as cook in the kitchen from interacting with 13. If things go horribly wrong at any point in the adventure and they set off a high alert on the suspicion table, this event is triggered to aid in their escape as a skill challenge. Chef Lamsey's is unaware of Varen Axebreak, the party, or anyone else. The second to last thing that I added is the aforementioned prison skill break challenge. 4 successes are required before 2 failures to break out of the prison in this adventure. I knew eventually that a failed skill check would happen with only one player, and one player against an entire prison doesn't sound like a lot of fun. I set the DC for all of the skill challenges to 13. The skill challenges were broke up sort of like this in my game. The initial surprise. The prisoners break their shackles, pull weapons, and attack the guards. If your party decides to help, they have advantage. The DC is the guard's armor. A spell slot of 1 or higher by any player lowers the DC of the armor class by 2. If the prisoners are successful, they attempt to flee from the guards and make a break for the walls closest to the boat. If they were unable to attack the guards properly, this becomes challenging and they have disadvantage. If your players cast a spell, it neutralizes the disadvantage. If the prisoners were able to attack the guards and your players cast another spell, again, it grants the prisoners advantage. I like rolling in front of the table for these type of skill challenges. The prisoners continue to move away from their cells to the walls, climbing the walls and eventually going over the walls and making their way to the boats that should be waiting for them by the docks. Some prisoners have rings of featherfall that they can use to jump out and flee. Athletics and climbing checks work here too. Once on the boats, they try to escape and are pursued by invisible stalkers, which there are 2 of in the prison in my write-up. I didn't exactly stick to this script and instead describe the scenario using different elements of flame, the klaxon alarm, lightning, rain, and other elements of chaos, including 45 prisoners fleeing through tight hallways of the Panopticon looking for escape in any way possible. My favorite and last part that I added to Prisoner 13 was the new Warden, Alistair Blackwood. I doubled the health of the standard mage template and added an extra 4th level spell slot. After I read the notes in the prisoner ledger, I thought to myself, what type of warden would run this type of prison? This warden that I invented was a Machiavellian controlling, evil narcissist wizard. You know the kind. This would make sense with all the magic in the place needing to be maintained, as well as the construction of the prison. The fact that this was built to contain highly competent criminals who more than likely have access to magic. When I was building Alistair, I actually used ChatGPT to help me flesh out the character. He serves as a great antagonist who you want to rip down from the mighty tower in the ice. I introduced the character with a failed prison break. Here's how the scene went. At some point where the characters would be making good headway, interrupt their progress by calling a mandatory guard meeting. I found this works best by waking up the characters in the middle of the night due to a prison break. This serves as a warning to what might happen if the suspicion table ever gets to high alert. The warden doesn't come out of his tower unless this happens. In my game, it went something like this. In the middle of the night, you awake to the sound of a klaxon alarm and flashing red lights, followed by darkness. After scrambling around for your things and adjusting, you realize the prison is on full lockdown. If you attempt to open the door to your barracks to see what's going on, you find the room that you're in is fully locked. After a mere 30 seconds, the alarm stops and the door is open. A cold voice magically whispers through the prison via thaumaturgy saying, "Pardon the interruption, but there's a mandatory meeting in the courtyard for all prisoners and staff. Immediately." This gives you a chance to fully show all 100 guards, 30 to 40 prisoners, and the party together. The prisoner who tried to escape is number 17. On a stage lifted up for all to see is prisoner 17, who has attempted to escape, currently being held by an invisible force, struggling silently. Standing at the top of the tower and addressing the now assembled depth and breadth of his empire is Alistair Blackwood, the Warden of Revel's End. Alistair Blackwood is a tall and imposing figure with a lean and muscular build that speaks to his dedication to physical fitness. He has a commanding presence and carries himself with an air of confidence and superiority, as if he sees himself above the riffraff that he watches over. He leaps down from the top of the roof, halting his acceleration towards the ground, moments before impact, with a well-timed featherfall spell. He gracefully stands and walks to the stage. His face is angular and chiseled, with sharp cheekbones and a strong jawline. His eyes are piercing blue, with a cold and calculating gaze that seems to take pleasure in the suffering of others. His thin lips often curl into a smile, especially when being observed by a crowd, as he is now, and he addresses the crowd with a smooth and polished voice that conveys his intelligence and eloquence. He wears a tailored suit, dark, formal attire, which contrasts sharply with the dingy and oppressive environment of the prison. He carries a slender cane, which he wields with a sense of authority and control. Overall, his appearance is one of power and control, as if he is the very embodiment of the oppressive and domineering nature of the prison he oversees. Alistair Blackwood gives the following speech. Revel's End, my masterpiece. You know, I had it designed 4 times before they got my vision right. The perfect prison, the glorious panopticon. You see, it's not just about locking up criminals. It's about breaking them down, stripping away their hope, making them nothing more than cogs in my well-oiled machine. I have eyes everywhere, you know. With my surveillance system, I can see every corner of this place, every move my prisoners make. And they know it too. They know I'm always watching, always in control. It's a beautiful thing, really, yet this is what happens when hope remains. He points to the prisoner struggling. This is what happens when you let them hold on to hope, when you befriend them, when you allow them to retain their humanity. They attempt to escape, which only leads to more suffering. He pauses. There is no suffering in my world. I made sure of it. I'm not a cruel man. I'm the one who gives them purpose. I'm the one who decides who gets what. He turns and addresses 17. If you'd just listened to me, you'd still be alive. But now you're dead. I hold the keys to your life and the keys to Revel End. With a sinister grin, he smiles. I'll tell you a secret. There is no escape from Revel's End. No one has escaped and no one ever will. Because as long as I'm in charge, this is where you'll stay. All of you. Forever. He makes a motion with his hand, and and prisoner 17 is shredded into mince. Without another word, he leaps into the air, rocketing back to the roof with a fly spell, and vanishes inside. The guards shakily call for the prisoners to return to their cell. At the climax of the story, Whisper fails to check for traps on one of the office doors, alerting Alistair Blackwood with a silent mental alarm spell. He has just a few moments to break into the correct drawer, during which time Alistair dresses and prepares to confront the threat before raising the alarm. Whisper casts Hypnotic Pattern and actually succeeds, pausing Alistair in the middle of the open doorway, leaving Flimbo the Goblin only moments away from noticing a slack-jawed, cane-outstretched Alistair would then sound the alarm. Whisper gets the ledger in the next action, but hears the klaxon alarm sound, which rouses Alistair from the hypnotic pattern. Having not but a moment, he dashes through the window of the office just as Alistair rouses and casts Cone of Cold through the window. The prison break starts just as Whisper lands in the center of the panopticon. All the cells open and the anti-magic barriers drop. This is due to Gordita Lamsey dimension dooring from her bedroom during the alarm and into the surveillance room, killing poor Flimbo and setting the prisoners free. Whisper convinces 13 to take the documents with her and run, as having the documents and staying isn't gonna look good. Alistair saw Whisper take the ledger and will attempt to kill both of them. They succeed in making it to the docks, but not before Alistair catches up with them, blowing up their means of escape and reiterating that no one leaves Revel's End except in a body bag. Combat quickly begins and quickly ends as prisoner 13 takes her revenge, realizing that she had fooled herself into thinking she was free in this prison long ago, and it only took until now to wake her up, due to what happened to 17, perhaps. As the prisoners close in, determined to make it to the next boat, Whisper misty steps onto the boat as 13 turns into a ball of flame and destroys the dock, swimming through the icy water covered in fire towards the next boat, which hasn't been destroyed. Now safe, she reveals the key, the design of which is tattooed onto her arm, hidden in her magical tattoos, and is the only way to get into the vault. She doesn't yet reveal the location to Whisper, but makes a new deal to double-cross Varen in exchange for 20% of the treasure, double what Varen had offered, still determined to cut him out. Whisper agrees to this new deal, setting up a potential one-shot with him and her to break into the vault of Varen. As I was working on this, I thought about adding in a prison fight club. Feel free to take that idea and run with it, maybe a different warden. The idea I had for the fight club was that each prisoner has a number, and you can challenge a prisoner who has a number higher than you for better status, better food, more comfortable prison cell. The twist would be, if you challenge prisoner 1, that's the warden, trapped in the prison with the rest, but ruler of all. I hadn't really fleshed it out, but take the idea and run with it if you like it. If you like this video, please toss a like and subscribe my way. I don't make videos very often, but when I do, they're bangers. If you really like the video, check out my website where I have a copy of this transcription, a OneNote file of the one-shot, and everything that you need to run this game exactly like I did. The speech that I gave was the mandatory guard meeting, which is a great scene, and the pages after that contain the optional skill challenge. I think that's it. I'll see you next time.